Caravaggio created this painting around 1597, and if someone asked you what you see in this detail and you answered a carafe of wine, you'd only get partial credit for your answer. Sorry, but this detail, my friends, has been found to contain an early self-portrait of Caravaggio at his easel, visible as a reflection in the glass carafe. You aren't seeing it, you say? To tell you the truth, me neither. In actuality, you can't see this detail with the naked eye. It used to be visible, however, since it was mentioned by an Italian restorer in 1922. However, poor restoration efforts and the gradual darkening of this image have obscured this small portrait over time. Only recently has the portrait resurfaced thanks to reflectography. In this article from The Telegraph, the reflectography results were published, and the photo shows a circle marking where the self-portrait is located. But the real question here is, why would Caravaggio hide a self-portrait in this painting? And what other hidden details might this painting of the god Bacchus contain? The first thing we need to clarify in this video is that Caravaggio's real name was not actually Caravaggio. His true name was Michelangelo Merisi, and Caravaggio comes from the small Lombard town where he was born in 1571. And although today we remember him as an absolute genius, in his youth he didn't seem to have a clear destiny. As a teenager, he passed through workshops in Milan, trained with lesser masters, and very early on showed a strong, rebellious temperament, almost impossible to tame. He was not the kind of painter who followed rules. His thing was painting reality exactly as he saw it. When he arrived in Rome, around 1592, he was practically a nobody. He came with little money, no important contacts, and a reputation for being difficult, but he brought with him something that set him apart from all the other artists: his incredible talent. At the beginning of his career, he survived painting still lifes and small commissions, until his style caught the attention of someone very important at the time, Cardinal Francesco Maria del Monte. Del Monte not only welcomed him into his palace, but also became his protector and patron. He gave him shelter, food, a studio to work in, and, most importantly, the opportunity to present himself to Rome's cultural elite. And it was under this protection that Caravaggio painted one of his first masterpieces, Bacchus, or the Young Bacchus, as it is registered today in the Uffizi Gallery. A painting that was destined for the Medici of Florence, but one that hid a secret that would only come to light centuries later. In this painting, we see a young man seated before us with pale skin and slightly flushed cheeks, almost as if he had drunk too much. On his head, he wears a crown of vine leaves intertwined with clusters of grapes, and in his hand, he holds a glass of wine, which he extends toward you, inviting you to drink. In front of him, on the table, rests a basket overflowing with fruit, painted with such care that they look freshly picked from the tree. Every detail, from the shine on the skin to the slight decay on some pieces, conveys astonishing realism. Yet the most striking part is not the fruit, but Bacchus himself. If we look closely, his fingernails have a slightly dirty tone, as if they belonged not to a god of Olympus, but to an ordinary boy from Rome. His cheeks are flushed, not like the flawless marble skin we are used to seeing on gods, but like someone who has already had too much wine, and his gaze is far from divine. It is not that of a god, but something mischievous, worldly, like a tavern companion ready to toast with you. And here lies the great contrast. In this era, artists usually painted gods and heroes as perfect, idealized, untouchable bodies, but Caravaggio breaks away from all of that. He takes the god of wine and turns him into an everyday young man, probably a model taken straight from the street, and paints him with a naturalism that borders on provocation. But now let's lower our gaze to the most curious detail of this painting. In the lower left corner of the canvas, just in front of the young Bacchus, there is a glass carafe filled with red wine. At first glance, it's a simple object, a transparent vessel reflecting the light. If you look quickly, it doesn't seem to hold anything special, just a shine, an undefined reflection. But let's remember, this painting was created by Caravaggio, and he was a master at hiding secrets in his works. In 1922, an Italian art historian, Matteo Marangoni, while observing the painting after a cleaning, thought he noticed something strange. He claimed that there, amidst the reflections, a tiny little head seemed to be hidden, a face that reminded him of Caravaggio himself. At that time, it was just an intuition without clear proof, and for decades it remained a mere curiosity of the painting, but the real confirmation came centuries later thanks to modern technology. In 2009, a team of restorers from the Opificio delle Pietre Dure in Florence subjected the painting to multispectral infrared reflectography. This technique allows us to see beneath the layers of paint and varnish that the human eye cannot penetrate, and what appeared in those images was astonishing. Hidden in the wine carafe was a tiny self-portrait of Caravaggio. According to their description, the images revealed a young man with dark curly hair, the white collar of his shirt standing out in front of an easel with a brush in hand. To grasp the genius of this detail, it is estimated that the self-portrait measures only about 6 to 7 millimeters, smaller than a pinky fingernail. It is so minuscule that even when standing close to the painting in the Uffizi gallery, it is virtually impossible to spot with the naked eye. Caravaggio painted it with the most delicate strokes, designed to merge seamlessly with the reflections on the glass. And partly due to the passage of time, the varnishes applied darkened, staining the lighter areas of the painting with a yellowish tint. On top of that, older restorations added extra layers that further blurred the reflection. This means that the face ended up buried under a translucent veil, making it practically invisible to the human eye. And the truth is, Caravaggio had a strange habit of inserting himself into his own paintings. In his early works, he did this more overtly. For example, in Young Sick Bacchus, painted around 1593, the model is not just any young man, it is Caravaggio himself. He portrayed himself disguised as the god of wine, but with a sickly appearance, yellowish skin, dry lips, and tired eyes. A few years later, he did it again in one of his most recognized works. In Medusa, that severed head screaming with bulging eyes, many experts agree that the face is his own. Caravaggio used his reflection in a convex mirror to paint the frozen expression of horror on that shield. In The Taking of Christ, painted in 1602, Caravaggio did not give himself a leading role. He avoided portraying himself as Christ or Judas. Instead, he chose something more discreet but equally meaningful. The man holding the lantern, illuminating the scene, is Caravaggio himself. He placed his likeness in the corner, like an eyewitness to the betrayal, watching the events unfold and ensuring that light, his great artistic tool, reached the heart of the drama. And perhaps the most famous case of all appears in one of his last works, David with the Head of Goliath. Here Caravaggio painted the young David holding the severed head of the giant, and that head, once again, is his own. The face of Goliath, with its parted lips and vacant stare, is a self-portrait of Caravaggio in his maturity. Many interpret it as an act of confession, the painter offering himself symbolically as the victim, acknowledging his life of excesses, crimes, and remorse. What we see is a clear pattern. Caravaggio is often said never to have signed his paintings, but in truth, he did, only with his own face, just as he did in this case, with the brilliance of painting himself hidden in the tiny reflection of a wine carafe. Surely at this point in the video, you're probably wondering if all of this is really true, especially since in all the photos I've shown so far, it's not possible to clearly see where that self-portrait is supposed to be. I haven't even been able to include the famous X-ray study the painting was subjected to, and unfortunately that study was never actually published. From reliable sources, and even from the Uffizi gallery itself, it is known that the study was carried out in 2009, but in none of the images released to the media can anything be clearly seen. The photos were never made public. Still, with everything I've just told you about Caravaggio, it's not surprising that he might indeed have painted himself into the work in such a subtle way. After all, you can tell me what you think in the comments. Do you see something in these images? Or do you believe it might simply be another detail of the painting to which too much importance has been given? I'd love to hear your opinion. If you'd like to have this painting in your own collection, you can now find it available on our website. In our catalogue, you'll discover more than 700 historical works to choose from, so you can pick your favourite and begin building your own collection. The video you're watching is just one example of how you can decorate your home with a masterpiece and turn it into your personal museum. Shipping is free worldwide, and by purchasing, you'll also be helping me continue creating videos like this one. I'll leave the link in the description. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.